Welcome to FoxEncounter. I am your host, Fox. Please consider taking a few seconds to subscribe, drop a like on the video, and share it with your friends. Stay tuned for more content and enjoy the episode.
And now, suspense.
I've heard that too. Like a lot of people will say that any kind of creator, content creator, artist, or whatever kind of emulates someone else. I personally didn't have that either. Like I can tell people that too, and they won't believe me. They'll be like, "Oh no, you had to." And I was like, honestly, like watch some of my old videos. Like you could tell that I was doing something that no one else was doing, and that's why I kept a lot of those old videos. I've gotten rid of like a lot of my old videos just because I was like I can't stand looking at these things anymore. So I got rid of all of them. Yeah, and but every once in a while, like I do have like the backups for them. But every once in a while, I'll go back to a video that I did. And I'm like, man, like I was really doing something that a lot of people weren't doing, and a lot of people still aren't doing in terms of like the way I presented what movies I was watching, or even like my edits from my videos, the one that you said you liked. That's the part that I really honestly miss the most. That's the only thing that gets me to want to make those kinds of videos again, is to insert a lot of those really stupid edits that I love doing. Like a lot of people were like, man, those edits are on point, man. And that takes a lot of time because none of that stuff that I do was scripted. So things would just happen naturally, and I would say something funny, and then I was like, oh man, like that would be perfect for this like clip or whatever. Or what like kind of clip I would have to like I have so many folders of just like crazy like video edits that I created myself, or dubs that I created myself, or just like funny clips from different memes or movies or video games.
Yes.
And I still have like a whole folder that I never got to use. I was like, man, like that would have been good to use in a video, but who knows? I'll probably never do it.
What the hell are you? I'm Rick James, bitch. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, like that's one of the things that I was most proud of, is when people were like laughing about some kind of edit that I did. And people still don't really like, I still see people attempting to do those in their videos, and I'm just like, nope, you can't do it like me, That's probably like one of the only things that I'm very like, I'm not a very cocky person. I even when I do my interviews, I'll look back at them and be like, man, I'm not that good. But like I'm very self-deprecating a lot, because I'm just like, man, I'm super critical about myself, and I'm always like, man, this sucks. But the edits though, I think it was always like, man, that was good. Like that was really good.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's like you said, like, I don't know where it comes from, because I'll give you a good example. And I'm using this example because you responded to it. But I believe it was my favorite TV shows of 2022. And I brought up Interview with the Vampire. And the thing is, with my reviews in general, and this is another thing that just kind of happened. It wasn't my intention. It's just like, as I speak, and it's just somewhere in there, when it comes to the medium of film and some TV shows, there are a lot of memories, and there are a lot of things that, of course, that I can attach to me growing up and just kind of experiencing certain things for the first time, or in a very significant way. And so with Interview with the Vampire, a very significant memory, and I can remember so much. Just like I can instantly recall so many different memories. And, when I think about, Interview with the Vampire, I'm like, oh gosh, I remember that night. I don't know which night it was, but it was late at night. The TV was on, and it just so happened to be on HBO. And it was a point where Lestat was making, I guess, a mockery of killing one of these women. And once I kind of realized what was going on, I was just like, it just suddenly got me. And it's weird because even though I was that young, some things I would be fine with that were horror-ish, and then other things would be like, I got to get out of here. And so I literally tapped really quickly the channel button on the VCR. So when I said that in the video, I was like, okay, that's what happened. And for whatever reason, as I was editing I don't know how my unconscious or subconscious mind works, but it literally pulled a clip from a reality show that I remember, because I remember thinking like, man, I know people are going to think I'm old when I say that. And it was like, hey, remember that scene where someone said you're the oldest mother in the building? Why don't you use that? Why don't you use that? And I was like, okay. And I literally went and found it, and and then put it into the video. But it's like you said, it's not a plan. It's just, I don't know how this works, but it's just like that stuff will come out of nowhere, or you'll pull something and I'm like, I wonder if I can use this later. But a lot of times it really is off the cuff, and I have to kind of go searching, and that does add to the timeliness, or just kind of the extended time in editing and post and all that. So that's kind of the biggest challenge for me, because I appreciate, I like, objectively speaking, I think the fact that I am so meticulous with detail, I think that's a quality aspect of my reviews. Again, saying that objectively, but it also takes a lot to, throw all these things in. And then sometimes I have to like change the file, because it's a web file, and I have to change it into a JPEG or a PNG. So but anyway, as frustrating as that can be, it is fun to just run it back and see it all come together that way.
I think you can tell too, like, at least I personally, I remember when I started watching different people and they would have those edits. See, I think that's where my process comes in, and why my edits and why my interviews, I think interview questions are so good, is because going back to, like, when people say you emulate people, I do the opposite, I guess. And I was talking to one of my buddies, one of my actor friends, about this, as we got a lot of really good reception from one of the interviews that I did where we talked about like Breaking Bad. And he was like, yeah, man, like I told him like, hey, yeah, that video is doing pretty well. A lot of people really liked it. And he's like, well, that's, because of you, you asked a lot of really good questions. And, when you give good questions, you'll get good answers. And, me, I'm always like, no, man, it's all you. I had nothing to do with that.
Right.
But he's like, no, no, give yourself some credit. And I was like, yeah. And he's saying like, like, that's because what you're doing is very good. And then I start to, like, I made a joke about like, well, it's because I'm so good, is because I watch really bad stuff, so I know what not to do. and as a joke, I said that, but then I realized, like, you know what? I actually do that. When it came to my edits, I remember when I would do edits and then I'd watch other people's videos, and I would see them have some in their videos, and I'm just thinking like, you can tell that was very scripted, and you really wanted to put that in there, so you did, and so it doesn't come off very genuine, or they were just like very ill-timed, or there was just way too many. If you're watching this, people who do edits on videos and insert like clips or memes or whatever, there is such a thing as too much. Like, I've seen some people just throw in like edits like literally every 30 seconds. And I'm like, bro, that's just way too much. I remember when I'm in the editing process and I can see like, whatever programming you have, you can see the whole like layout of it. And you can see where you insert videos and pictures and stuff like that. If I'm looking at it and all I see is picture, video, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to have to cut some of that out, because there's not enough room for the video to breathe when you do that.
Exactly.
The interviews and stuff, I don't watch any other interviewers, and I feel bad saying that because there's a lot of really good people out there. I never want to be accused of being inspired by anybody either. That sounds kind of egotistical, but that's just how I do things. I want to be able to be that person to say like, I did it all by myself, like no help from anybody. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm still someone who is considered a very small content creator, but I'm still very well known in different parts of the spectrum. So that's pretty cool. See, my thing is too, that even if I'm still at this small level for the longest time, I'm okay with that, because at least I know if something does ever happen with this, and if I ever do get to that point where I'm like interviewing like A-list celebrities, I can honestly say that I did it all on my own, and I'll be proud of that. I watch a lot of like compilations of just terrible interviews, and I'm like, all right, cool. Don't do that. Don't ask questions like this. What I like to do a lot too, that I feel like a lot of my guests appreciate, is that I'll make sure that they look the best that they can possibly look. I've had some guests that have said things that they've told me like, hey, can you cut that out or whatever? Or sometimes they don't even have to tell me. I was like, oh yeah, done. Because I already knew in the heat of conversation. Sometimes even myself, I'll have to cut out a lot of stuff that I say in a lot of these, which is why I like doing the recorded stuff. because I
Right.
find myself just saying something really dumb, and I'm like, yeah, no, that don't look good on me, so I'm gonna cut that part out. But what I love to do, that's what I like to do about with the guests too, is that when you're in the heat of conversation, sometimes you'll say something that you'll probably regret later. So I'm always like on the search for that and just making sure that everyone looks good. Because
Right.
like a lot of people, like I said, I don't want people to burn bridges or anything like that. But I also want people to be able to express their opinions on stuff.
I was going to say, as far as the kind of being inspired, but not technically not, but kind of finding inspiration in things that are not good. It's funny because I realize now that you've said that I think, like, going back to the whole trailer reaction thing, and I don't think there was anything in mind, because I think I was just thinking, like, what is, because I don't, like, at that point I didn't even know trailer reactions were a thing, and then the algorithm will show you things after you post something. And so I didn't have time to really think. I kind of came up with my own process. But I realize now something that adds to the detail piece of it is that people really, and I don't even mean just on YouTube, even though that's a big part of it, but I think people are okay spreading misinformation or having the wrong information or just not being well versed or not being well researched. And I understand, like, I'm not saying that anyone has to have a whole dissertation in place and just you have to have all your P's and, because I don't feel that way. Everyone's different. And, sometimes you just kind of say what you feel. So I don't feel like anyone should have to constrain themselves a certain way. But I genuinely watched a review not that long ago, and I was listening to it, and it just so happened that I'm pretty sure it's because I had done a review on the same film that the algorithm was just like, "Oh, hey, look at this." So, like, let me see what's going on here. And at least 5 things that they said, and it wasn't even that far into the video. Every single one of them were wrong. The director's name was wrong. The amount of money the first film made was wrong. This was wrong. I was like, wait a minute.
Wrong.
And granted, I have my own YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Let's just say, just as a general spectator, I don't feel like I should know more about this than you or automatically know that all this information is wrong. So it only, it kind of retroactively fuels my desire to, like, okay, is that correct? Like, because sometimes I think about the fact that we have access to so much information easily, like stuff we could just, like, hey, Alexa, or whatever it is, and people will just hop, skip, and jump over that and just say whatever. And it's just like, that just has not been my experience growing up. And of course, with my experiences with being a writer and just having to really be on your P's and Q's academically and certain things and sourcing and all that kind of stuff. Again, not saying that anyone has to do all of that, but I recognize that there are a lot of corners that get cut sometimes. And it's just like, well, at least respect the people that you're talking about enough to, like, get their information right, or make sure you're saying their name. Like, I'm talking about, like, we're changing the person's name completely and all kinds of stuff. So I definitely relate to that. And I make sure that for me, it's just more so about checking myself and making sure, like, if this is how I want things to be, if I want to continue to do this, I just want to make sure no one can say anything about I wouldn't want anyone to come to me and say, like, okay, but what's that? And then that was wrong. For me personally, and it may seem like a lot to some people, but it just makes me feel better to know that, like, I'm on it when I give information and when I say certain things. So yeah. So that I kind of relate to that too.
See, that reminds me of like, just misinformation and just getting things wrong that is easily you could just easily like Google something and get some information on it, because in the realm of interviews, there's some people that I've watched that are pretty high profile people who are interviewing people who are very well known, and even they'll get information wrong, and I'm sitting there like, I know that that's wrong, so why don't you know that that's wrong? Or they'll be like, oh, did you were you in this film or whatever? And they're like, oh no, that was somebody else. I'm like, bro, these are 2 completely different people who look nothing alike. Like, how could you confuse one with the other? And it's just so that's like, I guess what kind of also like fuels my passion for it, and also fuels my like ambition to do better because of that. I'm like, all right, this is a guy, or this is a person who is on this level. I'm down here, yet I can do better research than they can. But like, I'm like, bro, you have all these resources, you have people behind your productions, and you still can't get this like small stuff right. Like, that's not good.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And that's the hard part about it, because it also, I think we can be fine recognizing where we are, and we know, like, we're growing and we're going to get somewhere in due time. But it does make you second guess things, kind of second guess yourself, or just kind of second guess what you do, because it's like, because I've even said this before, like, I've had a couple of people just kind of reassure me, just as far as like, there's something distinctive about what you do and what you have to say. And much like you, I'm kind of like, well, I mean, I'm just talking. I just, do my videos and that's it. But with them saying that, they're like, well, more people should know about you. And I was like, well, the thing is, the way that this works sometimes, I'm not just saying that this is the summation of my journey, because I do believe that there are greater things to come. But the thing is, and I was being very frank when I said this, I'm like, the fact that I am so, well researched, and I'm putting all this detail and this and this and that and all the things that I do, technically speaking, nobody cares about that. And a lot of times people don't really care about that when it comes to what they want to see. And it could be, different reasons for that. But I've seen with some people, they want a show. They want someone to like rant and do all this. And man, what's with this movie? It's trash. And what's going on? Like,
that shit is fucking trash, dog. Get the fuck off the airwaves.
Oh, come on, man.
Like, people want a whole bunch of that, or they want, I've seen so many different things, and, and if that's what works for them, then it works for them. But I realize sometimes people want spectacle. They don't always want substance, or people want, like, just what they want doesn't always translate to accuracy, or having or having detail, or this, like, people can kind of fumble and stutter and whatever through. And if it could be just as simple as they like the person, or they like their personality, or they like their accent, or it could be anything, and they are simply in that position. And not to knock, because it still takes work. But sometimes I have to kind of check myself and recognize, well, that's not something that's always valued. Sometimes, like, people have various reasons as to why they connect to certain people or their platform. But in the meantime, all I can do is know for myself, if no one else ever says it, I have to know that there is value in what I do and what I have to say and my perspective and all of that. And I do believe that. I just have to make sure I still believe that when I see other things that challenge that.
I think what helps me along that way, when I do get a little bit frustrated and I do vent to some people about it, what kind of like reassures me that what I'm doing is really cool, and just for my personal thing, is like when I do get some of that praise from these people that I do respect, like someone like you, when you tell me that you really like my videos, and I respect you, so I'm like, you know what, yeah, if nothing else, if I'm getting like the respect from the peers and the people that I also respect, like that's good enough for me sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that also. It helps. It kind of takes the pressure off. I still can put a lot of pressure on myself, but it takes the pressure off when I know, and I mean this in a kind of in a community, in the sense of community, but like it helps me to feel less pressure. Like when I first started this, it was like, just one comment, just one like, just one, one subscribe.
And I can't deny the fact that you like me right now. You like me.
Like, you kind of feel like you're scratching and clawing for some kind of, and I don't want to say just validation, but just some kind of, like, hey, I'm here. Does anyone see this? Is anyone paying attention? But then, so you kind of have this sense of like, I got to go hard to really, and it's not that, and it's weird because it's not like that was my motivation, but it's like I wanted to kind of see that there was some kind of, what's the word? I just wanted to see that there was some kind of outcome or some kind of response, something to what I was doing. It can feel weird when it feels like you're just shouting into a void and no one, hears, or no one's paying attention. But then after a certain point, I realized there was this kind of sense of reassurance and being kind of taking the edge off when I realized, oh, I have some people who are always going to circle around and have something to say, and we'll be able to chat. It's not even about the fact that it's driving up numbers or engagement, but it's just the fact that like I know they're going to have a comment to say that I'll read and I'll enjoy it and I'll respond back and say something. And it's always like I remember on one of the Bridgerton recaps I did, you said something about like Shrek in period piece costumes.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was hilarious. So just even things like that, it kind of takes it off of like the performance, the engagement, the analytics, and it's like, no, we're connecting and see, and even like with the disappointing video that I just did, I might in my mind have a sense of how well that should have done or not have done or whatever. But the fact that people said like this was actually really funny, like this had me cracking up. This was, or I've had some people say like something I've done was a highlight in their day because they hadn't been feeling that well and so on. And so I'm like, that is everything to me because I've talked about, like a lot of people, the experience of 2020 and 2021. And I did this in the midst of that, kind of dealing with a lot of, emotional upheaval and all that. And, looking at some of the people that I ended up having community with was very gratifying, was uplifting. It just made me feel like, oh, like I feel connected. I don't feel so in this bog that is my brain and my mind and my emotions right now. So if anyone else can recognize that in what I do or feel like, hey, like I don't know, if they can connect to it some way and it can definitely just curtail our day-to-day foolishness or whatever shenanigans we might encounter, that's something that I also value. So yeah, it definitely goes beyond just the way we're meant to, I guess, qualify our performance or qualify our presence on the platform.